G'day everybody, welcome back to another episode of Craft by Tim. The shed is currently a little bit of a mess, but that's fine because I can work around it. And I'm stressing out about other things, so I'm not even concerned at all. In about 18 days, I'm going to go to a hammer-in, which is really exciting. I've never been to a hammer-in before. What's a hammer-in? It's basically like a blacksmith meetup and everybody gets together and makes a lot of noise and does cool stuff. I have no idea what it is I'm actually walking into. So I need a few things. I'm going to need a forge, I'm going to need a table for that forge to sit on, and I'm also going to need a blower for the forge because I'm thinking about doing a coal forge. Why not just use the forge that I've already got? That's an excellent question. I will come back to you when I have an answer. So without any further ado, let's jump in. So what sort of blower am I looking at? Well, currently I'm thinking a Japanese style set of bellows, otherwise known as a set of box bellows or piston bellows. Very, very simplistic, but yet ingenious because this is sort of like the predecessor to the modern car. It'll make more sense when it's done, so I'll explain it at the end of the video. But in the meantime, I hope you guys enjoy the build. Let's get started with some plywood. We're actually really close to this being done, but there are a few more things that we need to do before this is going to be a functional forge blower, and one of them is applying this vinyl to the inside of the box. So the idea behind using these means that I can open up the box as I need it, as I need to. If I hold my hand here and I slide this back and forth, I can feel a bit of air coming through, But it's not very much. And the reason why is because the air wants to escape through these big holes on either end. So what I need to do is I need to cover these holes from the inside. So as the ram pushes, it will close the bellow. And then as the ram pulls back, you can see that the momentum of the ram is creating a vacuum in this space, and it wants to pull the piece of vinyl off, or open rather. But basically when you're cutting your vinyl, you want to make sure that it is larger than the hole. You want to make sure that you have approximately 1 centimeter all the way around, and then probably at least 2 centimeters on top. And this will allow you to make sure that you actually have the right depth. Now we just go ahead and staple these flaps over the top of the holes to sort of create our one-way valves. Make sure that the flap is fully covering it, and you want to staple it as close to the outside as possible, because this is going to help allow it to flop down flat, and that's also why the steel is in there, so that it doesn't just keep flopping down to the same position. Then for the bottom, all we got to do, staple these ones here. Now I've made a bit of a mistake here, because when I close this, the bottom piece of ply here sits right underneath the hole, and I should have made these holes slightly smaller, but that's okay, because we should be able to still cover up the majority of the hole. We don't want to cover up any portion though that's going to be contacting with the inside of this box, so just keep that one in mind. Okay, so as of right now, it's working kind of well, but it needs something else. Cushioning. So the problem is that as it slides back and forth, what it wants to do is it wants to move the air. But because there's so much slop, and there needs to be a bit of slop because of the next step. So as this air gets pushed out, rather than going through the hole down the bottom here, it will just flow around the piston and move to this side of the chamber, and then the same thing on the way back. We're going to take this side off because I haven't glued this one in place, and we're going to coat the outside of this in an old towel. Most examples of this particular style of bellows is that people generally use sheepskin around this, but I couldn't source any sheepskin in the short amount of time that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and use this towel and just allow it to wad on the corners, and hopefully that will create enough of a sort of separation to allow the air to not quite be able to push past there, and it will find the path of least resistance, which will hopefully be this hole here. Oh yes! That is so good! So now with the forge blower done, I think it's time that we actually work on a forge so we can actually test out whether or not it works. That's what I was waiting for. So that pretty well does it. Actually genuinely happy with the way that this turned out. I think a lot of the problems are coming down to the type of charcoal that I'm using. So I'm hoping that in the future I'll be able to get better quality charcoal or just straight up coal, and hopefully that will help. It took me longer to build the bellows, but it took me 3 days to build the forge, so I'm pretty happy with that. And because of that, I was able to actually upgrade the forge a little bit. As you can see, it no longer has the angle iron going around the outside, it now has flat bar, which works a little bit better. I'm going to switch sides now because the sun's like in my eyes. Now that I've finished praising my excellent job here, there are a few pros and cons to this particular forge design. With the charcoal itself, I do have a plan of how to resize it, so I'll do that in another video. Hopefully that will be the next video. It seems like it should be a relatively simple design, and it should allow me to resize charcoal quite consistently and easily and quickly. First of all, with the pros, it's very quiet. In comparison to my gas forge, I generally just wear earmuffs all the time anyway because I'm forging, but like it sounds like a jet engine, but a less appealing jet engine. The other thing is that it looks really cool, which draws people in. And if there's one thing I know about like doing shows and stuff like that, blacksmithing is interesting, but if there's something that actually stands out about a particular blacksmith, they're probably going to go up and see. Most people have never seen bellows like this, and if they have, then they probably haven't seen them in person. Like I said, it's portable, it's easy to set up. I can set it up in about 5 minutes or so, and although that's the same with the other one, this one is a bit lighter and I can break it down into parts a little bit easier than what I can with the other one. It gets material hotter. Now, I imagine that once I get my fuel system fixed, then I'll probably be able to get steel a lot hotter than what I have been just messing around with it. But even with the fuel that I have, I'm still able to burn steel. It takes quite a bit of effort to get there, but I can still burn steel. It shuts off as soon as you walk away. This is kind of a safety feature, but I've just been sitting here, and it isn't burning away in the background. It's dead. There have been instances where I've injured myself whilst forging and that sort of thing. And with this, as soon as I injure myself and I'm like, oh, I need first aid kit, I don't have to think about it. Everything just stops by itself. The forge itself is really cheap to set up. This thing cost me about $100, and there are other options that you may be able to find around you that are going to allow you to get started with forging. This is probably one of the cheapest forges that you can build yourself, aside from a hole in the ground with a hairdryer attached to it. And of course, the last thing is no power. You can take this and set it up in the middle of the field, and you don't need any power for it. Now for the cons. The problem with the forge being able to shut off immediately means that if I wanted to make a bunch of one particular item, with this, as soon as I step away to start hammering, the forge is not going to be heating up my other pieces anymore. It makes all the more sense to find yourself a small child to do the bellows for you, and then you just do all the fun stuff. That being said, that small child is going to be pretty damn buff because it's very labor intensive. To switch between doing the bellows and then working the actual anvil, it will definitely get you a pretty good workout. And the last thing is that it is slow to warm up. Hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I had to bring it inside because it's been raining outside, but it's kind of live in the little shed. I was just doing some forging earlier. Anyway, so I hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend, or had a fantastic weekend. I don't know when this is going to come out, probably Monday. Also, sorry that you haven't heard from me for a little while. Things have been very busy. I'm on work experience, which means that I should have a little bit more time up my sleeve soon. So that should be good. So I hope to catch you all in the next episode. In the meantime, do remember to stay safe, happy crafting, and as always, cheers. Is that good? That's probably good.